Somewhere beyond what you can see, your name is being cleared in the unseen court of Allah. No lawyers, no witnesses, only truth. They thought you were silent because you were weak, but Allah heard every conversation you weren't in. He saw every lie you couldn't correct. He counted every tear you wiped in secret. And while they talked, He moved. While they plotted, He protected. You see, Allah doesn't defend you with noise. He defends you with timing. And when His timing arrives, even the ones who misunderstood you will testify in your favor without realizing it. Don't look away, because before this hour ends, you'll understand what it truly means. When heaven itself defends you in silence, the silent exposure, when Allah unmasks without a word. Sometimes Allah doesn't reveal the truth with storms or loud warnings. He doesn't need to. He simply begins to shift the energy around you so softly that you almost miss it. A person you once spoke to every day suddenly grows quiet. A friend who used to check on you now always seems too busy. The laughter doesn't sound the same anymore. The warmth that made your heart feel safe slowly fades away. You start wondering what changed. Did you do something wrong? Did you say something you shouldn't have? Why does everything feel different? You sit alone at night replaying old conversations. You scroll through old messages trying to find a reason. But deep inside you already know this is not confusion. This is direction. It's Allah gently showing you something you weren't ready to see before. He's pulling back the curtain quietly so you can see what your emotions kept defending. Allah doesn't always expose with words. He exposes with silence. He lets a person's true nature surface slowly, not to break your heart, but to free it from a lie. You may not realize it right away. You might even fight the feeling. You'd say, no, it's just a phase. But deep down, your soul whispers, something has changed. And that whisper, that uneasy peace, is Allah speaking directly to you. He's saying, you've seen enough. Now trust what I'm showing you. Sometimes we pray for clarity, and when Allah gives it, we mistake it for loss. We think He's taking people away, but in truth, He's protecting us from hidden harm. He saw what you couldn't. He heard the words spoken when you weren't there. He noticed the thoughts they hid behind smiles. And because He loves you, He won't let deception stay close to your heart. He doesn't want you to hate them. He just wants you to recognize the truth. Because how can you grow while you're surrounded by people who secretly root for your fall? So He ends certain connections without a fight. He makes them distance themselves without a reason. And even though it hurts, that distance is a doorway to peace. You might cry and ask, why did it end like this? But Allah knows that if He revealed everything at once, it would break you. So He removes things slowly, gently, through silence, not storm. It's His way of protecting both your heart and your dignity. Because not everyone who smiles with you is sincere with you. Not every kind word is born from a kind soul. And not every shoulder you cry on is meant to stay. Allah teaches through people, and sometimes once the lesson is complete, He removes the teacher. You see, what you call the end is often just the completion of a hidden lesson. A lesson about trust, discernment, patience, or self-worth. The person who walked away may never apologize. They may never even realize how deeply they hurt you. But Allah saw, and that's enough. You don't need an apology when the one who created hearts already knows yours. Every unanswered message, every cold reply, every distance that confused you, it was written for your awakening. Because Allah knew that if He didn't allow the silence, you'd keep investing in something that was quietly damaging you. So He drained the emotion out of the connection. He made it feel heavy, uncertain, uncomfortable. Not to punish you, but to make you let go naturally. He wanted you to choose peace over pain, truth over illusion, and Him over everyone else. When Allah loves you, He removes what pretends to love you. He removes the false so you can meet the real. And the moment you accept that silence is also a form of mercy, you start to breathe again. You stop chasing answers. You stop begging people to stay. You stop fighting for what Allah already released. That's when you realize losing people was never your punishment. It was your protection. Allah's silence is never empty. It's full of guidance. You just need to listen differently. He speaks through peace and discomfort, through distance and stillness. And if you stay close to Him, you'll notice that every quiet goodbye was actually a loud blessing in disguise. You look back one day and say, now I see why it had to happen this way. Because if He hadn't removed those people, you would still be trapped in emotional noise, missing the lessons your soul was begging to learn. Sometimes the greatest revelation comes when everyone else goes quiet. Allah closes one door to open 10 others. But in the moment, all you can see is the closed door. You cry, you question, you feel abandoned. And Allah says softly, you don't know what I just protected you from. He never exposes to humiliate. He exposes to heal. He never distances to punish. He distances to teach. And once you understand that, you stop seeing endings as rejection and start seeing them as redirection. Because when Allah unmasks someone, He's not trying to make you bitter. He's trying to make you wiser. You begin to realize that silence is not empty space. It's sacred space. It's where Allah does His most powerful work on your heart. In that silence, your heart softens, your ego melts, your patience grows. And you start to see people and yourself differently. You learn that some people come as blessings, others as lessons, and both are part of Allah's mercy. The ones who lied taught you discernment. The ones who left taught you detachment. The ones who stayed taught you gratitude. None of it was wasted. None of it was random. It was all written. Every silence, every distance, every revelation. Because Allah knew exactly how much it would take to wake your heart up to truth. So when silence visits your life, don't rush to fill it with noise. Don't beg to reopen what Allah has gently closed. Sit with it, listen to it. Because that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers you've been praying for. And slowly you'll see Allah was never silent. He was speaking all along, just in a language your heart had to learn first. The mercy hidden inside betrayal. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from the one you trusted most, the one you prayed for, the one you would have protected with your own heart. You never expect it. You never prepare for it. Because betrayal doesn't knock, it enters quietly and breaks something inside you that words can't describe. You sit there trying to understand how someone who once called you dear could now act like you were never there. You replay every moment, every message, looking for signs you might have missed. And your heart keeps asking, why would Allah allow this? But the truth is, He didn't allow it to destroy you. He allowed it to free you. If Allah didn't let that betrayal happen, you would have stayed attached to what was slowly draining your soul. You would have kept feeding trust into a heart that was never loyal to you. You would have mistaken comfort for connection and kindness for sincerity. Sometimes Allah lets someone betray you so that you finally stop worshipping their approval. He knows how deeply you care. He knows how loyal you are. And He knows that your loyalty would have made you blind to truth. So He tears the veil Himself. He exposes intentions through action. He lets masks fall. And even though it hurts, He's saving you from a future full of hidden harm. Every betrayal feels like a stab, but each stab has a message. This was never your piece. You see, betrayal doesn't just show you who they are. It shows you where your faith stands. It shows you how much of your trust was in people and how much of it was in Allah. Because when people break you, you finally discover who can fix you. That's the mercy hidden inside the pain. Betrayal teaches you not to chase closure from those who enjoy your confusion. It teaches you not to beg for understanding from hearts that chose to misunderstand you. It teaches you to stop expecting truth from those who have made peace with pretending. And that lesson is priceless. It's a mercy only Allah could design. A painful door that opens to lasting peace. At first you'll cry, you'll think I'll never trust again. But slowly Allah begins to rebuild you. He teaches you how to love without losing yourself. He teaches you how to give without expecting return. He teaches you how to protect your peace without closing your heart. It turns your pain into perception. Your heartbreak becomes your teacher. Your silence becomes your healing. Your tears become your prayers. And before you know it, what once felt like a punishment starts to feel like purification. Because sometimes Allah lets someone betray you, not to break your heart, but to break your attachment to what was blocking your growth. You see, if everything stayed smooth, you'd never learn who truly stands beside you when the light fades. You'd never learn how powerful you are when you're left alone with Allah. So He writes pain into your story, not to end it, but to begin a deeper chapter. He removes the wrong people to prepare space for the right ones. He empties your hands so He can fill them with better gifts. He closes a door with betrayal so He can open another with purpose. That's divine mercy wearing the mask of heartbreak. When you lose someone through betrayal, you don't really lose anything. You simply return to the one who never left, because Allah never betrays. He never forgets. He never abandons. He just waits for you to realize that peace doesn't come from being loved by people. It comes from being remembered by Him. And that's why betrayal is not the end of your story. It's the moment your story starts aligning with truth. Every disappointment, every broken promise, every false friend, they were all sent as lessons, not losses. Each one taught you something your comfort never could. The person who lied taught you to listen deeper. The one who left taught you that your worth doesn't depend on who stays. The one who used you taught you to set boundaries with grace. And the one who broke you taught you how to pray like you never did before. That's the hidden mercy. You become stronger, softer, wiser, all at once. At first you want revenge. You want them to feel what you felt. But then Allah fills your heart with calm, and you realize you don't need revenge when you have release, because peace is louder than payback. And forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means freedom. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You let go not because they were right, but because you're done carrying what was never yours. And in that letting go, you begin to taste a new kind of happiness. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's honesty. One day, you look back at that betrayal and thank Allah for it, because it pushed you toward healing, toward independence, toward Him. Without that pain, you'd still be living in illusions. Without that heartbreak, you'd still be serving people who only served themselves. But now, your heart knows better. Now, your faith is real. Now, your love has direction. Allah didn't take something from you. He took something away from you. Something that was never meant to stay. Because not every connection is meant to continue. Some are meant to correct you. Some are meant to awaken you. Some are meant to remind you of where your peace truly lives. And that peace is with Allah always. So the next time your heart breaks, you're not being punished. You're being purified. Allah is showing you what you couldn't see when you were blinded by loyalty. He's freeing you from a cage you thought was home. He's reminding you that the only love that never hurts is His. And once you learn that, you stop chasing people who walk away. You stop trying to fix what Allah has already finished. You stop begging for closure that was never yours to begin with. You begin to move with grace. You begin to heal quietly. You begin to see pain as part of your spiritual training. Every betrayal starts as heartbreak but ends as purification. It strips you of illusions until all that's left is truth. The truth that Allah's mercy is deeper than any wound. And when that truth settles in your heart, you finally smile again. not because you forgot what happened, but because you've learned what it meant. When truth arrives as stillness, not noise, sometimes truth doesn't enter your life with thunder. It doesn't arrive with people shouting, doors slamming, or endings that make sense. It arrives quietly like a breeze that passes through your soul and makes everything suddenly clear. You start noticing things you used to overlook. A tone in someone's voice, a hesitation in their smile, a heaviness in the room that used to feel light. It's not that the world has changed overnight. It's that Allah has opened your eyes. He doesn't always reveal the truth through chaos. Sometimes He whispers it into your heart in silence. He removes peace from what once felt peaceful. He lets a moment that once brought you joy now feel uneasy. That uneasiness isn't weakness, it's wisdom awakening. The truth often comes quietly because Allah knows your heart. He knows you don't need another storm. He knows you've survived enough noise. So instead, He brings you clarity wrapped in calmness. He teaches you through stillness. Because in stillness, your heart can hear what your ears have been ignoring. You start to realize that silence is not emptiness. It's information. It's guidance. It's Allah saying, pay attention to the peace that disappeared. So when the peace leaves, the truth enters. And once you feel that shift, you can't unfeel it. You can't go back to pretending you don't see. That's when your test begins. Do you hold on to what Allah is removing, or do you surrender to what He's revealing? Sometimes you beg for signs, and Allah gives them through the smallest moments. A conversation that feels off, a heart that suddenly feels drained. But because it doesn't come with thunder, you think it's nothing. Until later, when everything finally makes sense, and you whisper, Ya Allah, you were showing me all along. Truth never needs to shout to be real. It simply exists, waiting for your heart to become quiet enough to notice it. When Allah wants to teach you, He often removes noise from your surroundings. He slows everything down. He gives you space to think. That space can feel lonely. You'll wonder why people are distant, why life feels paused, why nothing seems to move. But that's exactly where He shows you the truth. Not through motion, but through stillness. He wants you to see what your busy life kept hiding. He wants you to reflect, to remember Him, to understand what really matters. Stillness is sacred. It's where your soul and your Creator finally meet without interruption. And in that meeting, the truth surfaces. Not as anger, not as noise, but as a deep knowing that sits in your chest. You'll find yourself saying, I don't know why, but I just feel it. That feeling is Allah's way of confirming what your eyes can't yet see. Maybe someone's smile no longer feels honest. Maybe an opportunity feels heavy, not blessed. Maybe a path you were forcing suddenly feels closed. Don't ignore that. That's not fear. That's divine protection speaking softly. Allah rarely shouts. He guides through peace and the removal of it. When something is right, He makes it flow easily. When it's wrong, He fills it with friction, not to frustrate you, but to save you. The problem is, we often chase noise. We want clear signs, instant answers, loud confirmations. But the truth from Allah is subtle. It doesn't compete for attention, it waits for obedience. And when you finally slow down enough to listen, you begin to see how He's been speaking through everything, through timing, through delays, through silence. You realize that the unanswered prayer was an answer in disguise. The delayed plan was direction being rewritten. The ending you feared was actually a beginning you needed. And all of that understanding happens in stillness. Because the truth isn't loud, it's patient. It waits for your heart to stop arguing with reality. One day, when you sit alone, you'll recall how everything that once made noise in your life is now quiet. And that quietness doesn't scare you anymore. It feels like peace. It feels like truth. That's when you'll smile and whisper, Allah, you've been teaching me through silence all along. The truth is gentle. It arrives when your soul is tired of lies. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just shows itself. And once it arrives, everything false begins to fall away on its own. You'll notice that certain people no longer affect you. Their words don't sting like before. Their absence doesn't break you anymore. Why? Because the truth healed what illusion once held. That's Allah's mercy. He doesn't want you to live confused. He wants you to live clear, and clarity often comes with quiet. So if your life suddenly feels slower, if Allah has placed you in a season of stillness, don't panic. Don't rush to fill it. Don't assume He's forgotten you. Stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything important is happening. Just not where you can see it yet. He's rearranging your story quietly. He's protecting you from unseen harm. He's preparing you for what's real. And one day, when movement returns, you'll realize that the pause was necessary. Because without it, you would have missed the truth. Allah doesn't send truth to destroy your peace. He sends it to give you real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's honesty. So don't fear silence. It's not the absence of answers. It's the classroom of wisdom. The more you sit in it, the more you'll understand that not everything broken needs fixing, and not everyone lost needs finding. Some things are meant to fade quietly because their time is over, and Allah removes them without sound so you can heal without shame. When their absence becomes a form of protection. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones that happen without warning. No fight, no reason, no closure, just distance. One day they're close and the next day they're gone. You keep checking your phone, hoping the silence will end, but it doesn't. It stretches and it starts to speak. At first, it feels unfair. You wonder why Allah would let someone leave when you loved them so deeply. You ask yourself what you did wrong, why He took them away when your heart still needed them. But slowly, you begin to see their absence isn't a punishment. It's a form of protection. Allah saw something you didn't. He heard conversations you never heard. He felt intentions you couldn't feel. He knew that if they stayed, they'd block what was meant to reach you. He doesn't remove people to hurt you. He removes them to heal you before you even know you're bleeding. You see, not everyone who holds your hand is meant to walk your whole journey. Some people are sent to teach you strength. Some are sent to show you limits. Some are sent to prepare you for a version of yourself they could never meet. And when their chapter is done, Allah ends it quietly. Not because you failed, but because you've outgrown what once felt right. That's what divine protection looks like. Silent, confusing, but merciful. You don't realize it at first. You cry. You replay memories like a film you don't want to finish. You check their profile. You wait for them to return. But time keeps moving and the silence keeps teaching. Allah is saying, if you knew what I know, you'd thank me for this distance. Maybe that friend you lost would have betrayed you later when you needed loyalty most. Maybe that relationship you prayed to save would have taken you away from your faith. Maybe that person's presence would have delayed the very peace you've been asking me for. So Allah removes them, sometimes gently, sometimes suddenly, but always with precision. He knows how tightly you hold on, so He writes endings that force you to let go. He writes silence so deep that even your heart can't deny what's already over. And though it hurts, it's the kind of pain that carries healing inside it. You learn that you can survive what you once thought would end you. You learn that your world doesn't collapse when someone walks out. It just reorganizes itself around Allah. At first you think you're losing something valuable, but later you realize you were only losing the weight that kept you from flying. Their absence gives you space to breathe again. You start hearing your own voice more clearly. You rediscover things you abandoned while trying to please them. You find peace in places they never could. That's the secret behind divine separation. It creates the silence where your soul can finally speak. It's in those quiet nights that you start seeing patterns. You realize how much of yourself you gave away trying to be enough. You remember how many times you ignored red flags because you were afraid of being alone. But solitude with Allah is not loneliness, it's recovery. It's the repair of everything that broke. While you were busy holding on, you begin to see the wisdom behind every distance. Every unanswered message becomes a sign of mercy. Every door that closed becomes a door that protected your dignity. You stop chasing after what left. You stop trying to reopen what Allah locked. You start believing that maybe, just maybe, this absence is a shield, not a scar. Because the truth is, if some people had stayed, you would have stayed small. You would have kept compromising your peace to keep connections that were never meant to last. Allah removes what blocks your growth. He subtracts so He can multiply. He breaks attachments so He can rebuild purpose. And yes, He does it quietly. Because His mercy doesn't need to announce itself. It only needs to work. You'll notice that after they're gone, new doors start opening. New people appear gentle, sincere, aligned with your spirit. Opportunities come that once felt out of reach. Peace slowly replaces pain. And that's when you understand their absence was not empty space. It was preparation for something greater. Allah never leaves you halfway. When He removes, He replaces. When He takes, He gives better. When He closes a path, He's simply guiding you to one that leads to light. But in the beginning, it doesn't feel like guidance. It feels like loss because the human heart doesn't like change. It clings to what's familiar, even if that familiarity is hurting it. So Allah has to protect you from your own attachment. He lets things fall apart. So you can see who was really holding them together. Not them, but Him. You start remembering who carried you through your worst nights. It wasn't the person who left. It was the one who never did. That's the true blessing of absence. It pushes you closer to the only presence that matters. And when you reach that point, your pain turns into gratitude. You start saying, Ya Allah, thank you for removing what I couldn't release myself. Because sometimes what you call heartbreak is just Allah rescuing you from a hidden fire. You didn't lose a person. You lost a distraction from your purpose. You didn't lose love. You lost attachment to what was blocking divine love. Every ending that Allah writes comes with hidden mercy folded inside. You just have to let time unwrap it. And when it unfolds, you'll realize that absence wasn't the opposite of love. It was the evidence of protection, the mirror of divine discernment. Sometimes Allah teaches you not through what He gives, but through what He shows you. He doesn't only test your patience, He refines your sight. He teaches you to see beyond smiles, beyond words, beyond appearances. He gives your heart a mirror that reflects truth the eyes can't catch. This mirror is called discernment. It's not learnt in books, it's shaped through experiences that broke you open. When Allah loves you, He doesn't just protect you from harm. He trains you to recognize it before it reaches you. He teaches you how to read energy instead of excuses, how to sense sincerity instead of believing performance. At first, you think it's just overthinking. You feel something off about a situation, but you doubt yourself. You tell your heart to stay quiet because you don't want to seem cold. But Allah whispers through that discomfort a soft feeling that says, pay attention. That's not suspicion. That's divine discernment. It's the language of protection only the sincere can hear. Before, you used to see faces and think you saw hearts. You took words as truth. You thought kindness meant purity. But after the storm, after betrayal, after heartbreak, your soul learned something deeper. It learned that not everything wrapped in light comes from light. Some smiles hide wounds. Some compliments hide envy. Some friendships hide competition. And now you see differently, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. Allah has sharpened your spiritual sight. You no longer fall for what glitters. You look for what brings peace. You listen not just to what is said, but to what your heart feels while it's being said. That's growth. That's the mirror of divine discernment doing its work quietly inside you. You start walking into rooms and sensing peace or heaviness immediately. You start noticing that your heart tightens around some people and relaxes around others. That's Allah showing you where your soul belongs and where it doesn't. He trains your instincts to protect your peace. He builds spiritual alarms inside you. You won't need proof, you just know. And the most beautiful part, you learn not to judge anyone, but to protect yourself gently. Because discernment doesn't make you harsh. It makes you peaceful. It teaches you to stop arguing for what doesn't feel right. To stop forcing doors that Allah closed. To stop explaining to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Now you can see not through suspicion, but through clarity. Clarity born from pain. Clarity that doesn't shout, it simply knows. You used to call it intuition. You used to call it a feeling. But now you know it was Allah guiding you all along. He was training your eyes through every disappointment. Every lie, every loss, every silence was building your spiritual radar. And now when you meet new faces, you see through energy, not expression. You feel sincerity before it's proven, and you feel deception before it's spoken. That's a gift. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. A heart cleaned by tests sees the world differently. You don't need to expose anyone. You don't need to argue or convince. You simply observe and act with peace. Because discernment teaches you to stay kind but not blind. To stay generous but not gullible. To stay loving but not naive. There's a maturity that only pain can give. And when Allah gives it, it changes how you move. You stop rushing into connections. You start listening for alignment. You watch whether your peace increases or decreases when someone enters your life. Because peace is the language of truth. If Allah is in it, it will feel light. If He's not, it will feel heavy, even if everything looks perfect. You begin to understand why Allah removed certain people the moment you prayed for clarity. Because discernment always follows a sincere dua. You once prayed, Ya Allah, show me who's real. And He did, not through words, but through energy, distance and silence. Now, you don't hate those people. You thank Allah for them because they became the mirrors that taught you how to see. Every fake friend was a teacher of truth. Every painful ending was a lesson in perception. Every silence was an upgrade to your spiritual vision. You realize that discernment is not about seeing people's flaws. It's about seeing Allah's wisdom in how He places people in your life. Some are sent to awaken your heart. Some are sent to test your patience. Some are sent to drain what shouldn't stay. And all of them leave behind clarity. That's divine mercy in disguise. Now, you move differently. You walk softly. You observe quietly. You don't rush to speak because you've learned that silence tells more truth than words. You don't chase closeness anymore. You let peace decide. If it's right, it will fit naturally. If it's wrong, it will exhaust you. Discernment teaches you to stop forcing connections that don't align with your soul. It teaches you that almost right is still wrong and almost peaceful is still heavy. You start choosing people who match your prayers, not your loneliness. You start saying no to energy that drains, even if your heart still remembers their kindness. This is the maturity that comes when Allah refines you through tests. You become gentle but guarded, loving but wise, open but rooted. You don't give everyone access to your spirit anymore because you've learned that not everyone carries peace. And that's not arrogance, that's stewardship. You're protecting what Allah purified inside you. The heart is sacred space. Not everyone deserves to stand there. Allah gave you discernment so you can decide who enters and who stays outside. And this ability isn't found in knowledge. It's built in silence, tears, and surrender. It's when you've cried enough to understand that not every loss is loss. Some are lessons that gave you sight. You become calmer. You don't rush decisions. You take pauses between emotions because discernment thrives in reflection, not reaction. And when someone tries to fool you again, you no longer panic. You see through it with peace. You let them reveal themselves while you stay still, because you know that the truth always exposes itself. You don't have to do the exposing anymore. This is the beauty of divine discernment. It removes the need to fight. It replaces chaos with quiet knowing. You simply know, and that knowing sets you free. You stop explaining your choices. You stop begging to be understood. You stop needing validation, because the one who gave you the vision is the only one whose approval matters now. You trust your peace more than people's opinions. You trust silence more than promises. You trust Allah more than outcomes. That's the highest level of discernment. To see not just people but purpose. You start to realize that life is not about who stays and who leaves. It's about what you learn from every meeting. Every person Allah allows into your story is a reflection of something He wants to show you about yourself. Some people show you your softness. Others show you your limits. Some reveal your patience, and some awaken your strength. Everyone is a mirror, but only a discerning heart can see what's being reflected. You begin to notice that Allah uses people like messages. Each one delivers something, a lesson, a reminder, a test, or a blessing. Once their message is complete, He removes them from your path. It's never random, it's never cruel. It's just divine order unfolding in silence. And when you start trusting that, your heart becomes calm even when things don't make sense. You say, this person hurt me deeply. And Allah says, they were the mirror. They showed you where to heal. You say, this person loved me so purely. And Allah says, they were the mirror. They showed you how love feels when it's real. Every interaction becomes part of your guidance. Every face becomes a reflection of your growth. That's why Allah gives you discernment. So you stop labeling things as good or bad and start seeing them as necessary, because even the people who disappointed you played their role perfectly in your spiritual evolution. They taught you how to set boundaries, how to say no, how to pray with tears instead of pride. And those who loved you sincerely taught you that not all hearts are cold, that there are souls who still mirror goodness, and that Allah places them near you as proof that purity still exists. So you stop complaining. You stop asking, why me? You start saying, what am I meant to see here? And that's when your eyes truly open. That's when every wound turns into wisdom. You start recognizing patterns. The same type of person keeps reappearing until you finally learn the lesson. And once you do, the test ends. The people who once triggered you lose their power. Because you've grown, you've elevated. You now see with a lens shaped by divine discernment. You no longer chase explanations. You no longer defend yourself to those who twist truth. You simply let your peace speak for you. And somehow Allah makes that peace louder than any argument. You walk away with dignity. You let silence defend you. Because you've realized that clarity doesn't need noise. It just needs patience. There's something sacred about not reacting. When you choose calmness over chaos, you're telling Allah, I trust your timing more than my emotions. And that's when He begins to fight your unseen battles for you. Discernment gives you that balance. You see everything, but you don't respond to everything. You know what's false, but you don't waste energy trying to prove it. You simply protect your peace. You smile quietly. You let Allah handle what you've outgrown, because discernment isn't about exposing others. It's about elevating yourself. You've learned that some things aren't your business to fix. Your job isn't to correct everyone. It's to stay aligned with truth. And the more you honor that, the more Allah protects your peace in ways words can't explain. One day, you look back and realize how much chaos you avoided simply because you chose silence instead of reaction. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You now live with clarity. You see beyond surface appearances. You hear beyond words. You feel beyond gestures. You trust your soul more than opinions. You trust Allah's signs more than explanations. And when confusion tries to enter your life again, you recognize it immediately. You no longer let chaos disguise itself as connection. This is the quiet confidence of the heart that has been trained by Allah. It doesn't need to shout to be sure. It simply knows. And when you live like that, life feels lighter. You don't carry everyone's intentions. You don't chase validation. You don't need closure from people who were never open. You've seen what Allah wanted you to see. You've learned what He wanted you to learn. Now, you protect that awareness like treasure, because discernment is not just insight, it's responsibility. It's the sacred duty to live wisely with what you now know. You start being careful with your words. You stop oversharing your dreams. You keep your heart sacred, not out of fear, but out of respect for what Allah has purified in you. You realize not everyone will understand your silence, and that's okay. They're not meant to. You're not here to be understood. You're here to understand. And once Allah grants you that, you walk with a peace that doesn't need an audience. You stop explaining your transformation. You stop apologizing for your growth, because you know the same people who misunderstood your boundaries once benefited from your lack of them, and you thank Allah for that awareness. It's a mercy to see clearly. You begin to make choices from faith, not fear. You ask Allah for discernment before you ask for success, because without discernment, even blessings can become burdens. So now, every time you meet someone new, you quietly say in your heart, Ya Allah, if this person is written for my peace, make it clear. And if not, protect me gently. And He always answers, not through words, but through the peace or discomfort that follows. That's how He guides His servants, not by shouting, but by shifting energy. And those who are close to Him, they notice the shift immediately. They listen. When peace disappears, they pay attention when silence starts speaking. That's the highest level of spiritual maturity, when you can sense Allah's no without needing an explanation. You no longer force doors to open. You no longer beg people to stay. You no longer rush His plan. You let discernment lead you back to peace. And that peace changes everything. Your relationships become healthier. Your choices become wiser. Your life becomes quieter. You realize that you don't need to see the whole road. You just need to see the next step clearly. And that clarity always comes from Allah. You used to pray for strength. Now you pray for sight. Because the strongest heart is not the one that fights the longest, but the one that sees the truth early and walks away peacefully. You no longer ask, why did they treat me this way? You ask, what did Allah want me to learn from this? And that single question transforms every pain into purpose. Discernment makes you graceful. You stop carrying bitterness because you understand wisdom. You stop resenting endings because you've seen how Allah writes new beginnings. You stop fearing loneliness because you've tasted divine companionship. Now, even in solitude, you feel surrounded, not by people, but by peace. And that peace becomes your compass. It tells you where to stay. It tells you when to leave. It tells you who's real. It tells you who's pretending. That's Allah's gift to hearts that went through enough noise to finally love silence. The mirror of divine discernment doesn't show you others. It shows you yourself. It shows you how far you've come. It shows you what you've survived. It shows you how Allah built wisdom through every wound. And once you see that reflection clearly, you stop chasing clarity from others. You realize the mirror was never outside. It was within you all along. Allah simply cleaned it through experience, so you could finally recognize yourself through truth. And that is the highest form of protection, to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to choose peace over noise every single time. The humility of letting go without revenge. Sometimes life hands you a moment that burns quietly. Someone hurts you and the pain doesn't roar, it whispers. They betray your trust, twist your words, or walk away as if you never mattered. And inside you, something shakes. You feel anger rise, your heart pounding with thoughts like, they deserve to feel what I felt. It's human. That's how pain reacts when it's fresh. It wants to balance the scales. It wants justice, but sometimes it also wants revenge. Yet that's when Allah calls your soul to rise above the noise of the wound. He invites you to let go, not because they were right, but because He wants to make you right within yourself again. Letting go without revenge isn't weakness. It's a kind of strength only the broken understand. It's when you stand before the fire that burned you and say, I choose peace instead. At first, your ego screams. It says, no, they need to see your pain. They need to feel it. But your faith whispers, let Allah show them what words can't. That whisper is where humility lives. It's where your soul bows, not to them, but to the truth that Allah is enough. You see, revenge feels powerful for a moment, but it poisons you slowly afterward. It keeps you replaying the scene over and over. It arguing with memories that can't hear you anymore. You begin to live in yesterday, and yesterday can't heal you. So Allah sends you calm thoughts in the middle of your anger. He reminds you that silence can defend you better than shouting. He reminds you that your dignity is safest in His hands, not in their guilt. When you forgive and walk away, you don't lose, you win quietly. You save yourself from carrying their darkness any further. You can't control what they did, but you can control what grows inside you because of it. Will it be bitterness or wisdom? That choice becomes your test. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without hate. It means you can look at what happened and say, yes, it hurt, but it also woke me up. That is where humility blooms in the soil of pain that refused to harden into hatred. Think about it. Every time you choose calmness when you could explode, angels record strength. Every time you keep quiet when you could expose, heaven records patience. Every time you let Allah defend you instead of your tongue, He writes down honor you can't see yet. You're not losing. When you walk away, you're being lifted quietly. Sometimes the hardest part isn't forgiving them. It's forgiving yourself for letting them hurt you. But even that is part of humility. It's when you realize you were only trying to love, to trust, to see good, and there's no shame in that. Allah doesn't want you to live guarded behind bitterness. He wants you to heal, to remain kind, to keep your light soft. That's why He lets you feel the sting of betrayal, so you learn that not every reaction deserves your energy. You might think revenge will give you closure, but revenge is a door that never truly closes. It keeps opening to regret. It makes you resemble the very thing you were trying to escape. But when you hand the matter back to Allah, your heart unclenches. Your nights grow quieter. You stop drafting speeches in your head. You stop waiting for apologies. You start living again. People may call your silence weakness. They may say you let them win, but you know better. You know your peace is louder than any explanation. You know your forgiveness is a shield, not surrender. Because when Allah fights for you, the results speak for themselves. He exposes truth in ways that leave no trace of arrogance in your heart, only gratitude. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it never hurt. It means choosing not to let the hurt become who you are. There's beauty in that restraint. It's the beauty of a heart that has seen darkness but refused to turn dark. It's when you smile again, not because everything is fine, but because you trust the one who writes the endings. And every time you resist revenge, you polish your soul a little more. You clear a space for Allah's justice to unfold. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen where you can see, but it always happens. And when it does, it doesn't look like punishment. It looks like peace. It looks like new doors opening, new people arriving, new versions of you being born from what once broke you. That's Allah's justice. Quiet, precise, merciful. He never forgets what was done to you. He simply waits for the right moment to show you why you needed to stay still. When that moment comes, you realize something sacred. Your silence was your weapon, and your patience was your proof. You didn't need revenge. You just needed time and trust. Because time doesn't hide truth, it reveals it. And trust doesn't weaken you, it frees you. The world may never know your side of the story. That's okay. Your story isn't meant to be proven, it's meant to be purified. When you stop explaining yourself to those who were never listening, you start hearing Allah more clearly. And that clarity is worth every silent tear you shed. You will feel His justice one day, not through their downfall, but through your elevation. You'll see that what they took from you was never meant to stay. And what you gained through the pain is something no one can ever take. Wisdom, softness, humility. That's the victory no revenge can give. Forgiveness doesn't erase memory, it rewrites it. It turns why me into thank you Allah. It turns bitterness into boundaries. It turns anger into awareness. And one day when you see that person again, your heart won't race. Your hands won't shake. You'll just feel peace. Not because they changed, but because you did. You rose without ruining them. You healed without humiliating them. You walked away without wishing them harm. And that's the moment heaven smiles upon you, because you passed a test. Few hearts ever do. You chose restraint over revenge, peace over pride, grace over anger. The healing that comes from understanding. Sometimes the healing you've been praying for doesn't come through time or people or distance. It comes through understanding. When you finally understand why something happened, when you finally see what Allah was protecting you from, the pain that used to feel unbearable begins to make sense. It doesn't disappear, but it loses its power to control you. Because now your tears have meaning. Your wounds have wisdom. You stop asking, why me? And start whispering, now I see. Healing begins the moment understanding enters. And understanding only comes when the noise fades, when your heart stops fighting reality and starts listening to what Allah has been trying to teach. At first, you resist. You say, I didn't deserve this. You look around and think of all the people who seem happier, freer, untouched. And then you wonder why you had to be the one to break. But Allah never breaks a soul to destroy it. He breaks illusions to build clarity. He lets pain visit, not because He enjoys your tears, but because He wants you to look deeper than you ever have. He wants you to see that your story was never about loss. It was about purification. Understanding is like a light that slowly grows inside the dark room of your heart. At first, it flickers small, uncertain, then it begins to glow steadily. And one day, you realize the darkness isn't scary anymore. You can finally see what's inside. That's what Allah does when you keep trusting through confusion. He starts showing you hidden meanings behind everything that hurt. You begin to see that maybe that rejection wasn't rejection. It was protection. Maybe that silence wasn't distance. It was redirection. Maybe that heartbreak wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something real. And when you reach that level of awareness, healing comes quietly. Not through forgetting, but through understanding. You start remembering moments that once broke you, and instead of crying, you nod softly. You say, it had to happen. That's not numbness, that's wisdom. It's your soul saying, I've learned what this pain came to teach me. You start to notice how every loss created space for something better. How every delay built patience you now use daily. How every no taught you the value of Allah's timing. Healing through understanding doesn't erase the past. It rewrites it. It turns the story of I suffered into I grew. It turns wounds into lessons and lessons into strength. You look back and see how every closed door led you here. Every unanswered prayer brought you closer to what truly matters. Every lonely night was training you to find peace in Allah, not people. That realization softens you. You stop being angry at life. You stop envying others. You stop comparing journeys. Because now you see how personal Allah's plan is. No one could walk your path the way you did. No one could bear your tests and still keep faith like you did. And that understanding heals something. Pride never could. Your relationship with yourself. You stop calling yourself unlucky. You start calling yourself chosen, because the truth is, the more Allah loves a heart, the more He refines it. And refinement always comes with friction. He removes the fake peace that comes from comfort so He can replace it with real peace that comes from trust. You might still cry sometimes. Healing doesn't mean you never feel sadness again. It just means your sadness no longer owns you. You can sit with it and say, Addumin, I know why you're here, but I also know you'll pass. That's understanding. It turns storms into classrooms. It turns pain into prayer. It turns every scar into a verse of gratitude. You start appreciating what once terrified you. You start thanking Allah for things you once begged Him to change. You realize that every delay saved you from walking into something that wasn't ready. Every disappointment was preparing your character for what's coming. Every separation cleared the path for peace to find you again. When you understand, you heal differently. You stop forcing closure. You stop chasing apologies. You stop needing explanations, because understanding itself becomes the closure. You finally see that some people didn't hurt you because they were evil. They hurt you because they were unhealed, and you just happened to meet them while they were still breaking. You understand that their behavior was never about your worth. It was about their wounds. And that realization lifts a huge weight off your heart. You start forgiving them not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. You stop replaying the same scenes in your mind because you finally understand they were only temporary chapters, not the full book. Understanding teaches you to bless people as they leave. It teaches you to let go gracefully. It teaches you that Allah's plan doesn't need your panic to work. You see that healing isn't about finding answers outside yourself. It's about finding Allah inside yourself. And when you do, you begin to smile at moments that once made you cry. You realize that the same events that broke your trust in people rebuilt your trust in Him. That's the secret of divine healing. It replaces the question, why me, with the statement, I needed this. You don't hate the story anymore. You start honoring it. You realize that every season shaped you into someone wiser, softer, calmer. Now when you see someone going through pain, you don't rush to fix them. You just sit beside them quietly, because you understand that understanding takes time. You pray for them silently because you remember how someone once prayed for you when you couldn't pray for yourself. That's what true healing does. It makes you gentle again. You no longer see life as cruel. You see it as beautifully precise. Every heartbreak was custom made to open your eyes. Every tear was counted by the one who promised never to leave. And when you look back, you realize you were never alone for even a second. Allah was with you in every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every moment you thought you'd never smile again. He was preparing you quietly, removing what couldn't stay, refining what had to stay, and rebuilding what needed to grow. That understanding is where real peace begins. Because once you know who was behind every closed door, you stop knocking with desperation. You start waiting with trust. You stop saying, please open this door, and start saying, open only what's good for me. Understanding doesn't just heal your heart, it transforms your faith. You start loving Allah differently, not for what He gives, but for what He teaches through what He takes. You stop being afraid of pain because you've seen what pain produces when you surrender. And now, when something hurts, you don't rush to complain. You take a deep breath and whisper, there must be something beautiful coming after this. That is understanding in its purest form, the ability to see beyond the surface of pain and recognize the mercy hidden underneath. Healing through understanding is not a one-time event, it's a slow unfolding. It happens quietly, often when no one is watching. You're washing the dishes and suddenly you smile because a memory that used to sting now feels light. You're walking to prayer and realize you haven't thought about that wound in days. You feel peace sneaking in where pain once lived. That's how Allah heals subtly, mercifully, almost invisibly. You never know which breath will be the one where the burden lifts. You just keep walking and one day the road feels softer beneath your feet. Understanding teaches you to stop waiting for grand moments of relief. Healing comes in tiny pieces. A verse that speaks directly to you, a conversation that reminds you of your worth, a sunset that feels like a sign you're finally okay again. The heart that understands doesn't rush. It knows everything unfolds exactly when it's meant to. And that calmness becomes your new strength. You no longer need to explain your pain to everyone. You stop looking for people to validate your feelings because now you know the one who allowed the wound is the same one who is teaching through it. You start recognizing that every pain was a classroom and every tear was tuition paid for wisdom. That's why wisdom feels expensive, because it costs heartbreak, confusion, silence. But it's worth it because what you gain afterward cannot be learned through comfort. It can only be learned through surrender. When you understand Allah's wisdom, you stop fighting His timing. You stop thinking He's late. You stop doubting that He hears you. You realize He heard you the first time you cried. He just loved you enough to answer differently. Healing begins when you can say, even when I didn't get what I wanted, I still got what I needed. And that realization changes how you live. You begin to handle life with softness instead of fear. You become patient in waiting, grateful in receiving, and peaceful in losing. Because you understand now nothing was random. You look back and see how even your mistakes had purpose. They humbled you, they brought you closer to repentance. They turned arrogance into awareness. They taught you how fragile the human heart is and how gentle Allah is with those who return to Him sincerely. Understanding heals your relationship with the past. You no longer wish to erase anything. You thank Allah for using every chapter, the messy, the painful, the confusing, to polish your soul into something clearer. You realize that every fall made your prostration deeper. Every failure made your prayers more honest. Every disappointment made your gratitude more real. That's the kind of healing that lasts. Because it doesn't depend on who stays or who apologizes. It depends only on how much you've learned to trust Allah's script. And when that trust matures, you stop chasing happiness. You start recognizing peace. Peace isn't excitement. It's not loud laughter or perfect days. It's waking up with a quiet heart that says, I may not have everything I want, but I have everything I need for today. Understanding transforms your dua too. It changes, remove this pain into reveal its purpose. It changes, why is this happening to me, into what are you teaching me through this? And that shift opens the gates of healing wider than any cure, because now your soul cooperates with destiny instead of resisting it. Even when life feels uncertain, you begin to trust the uncertainty itself. You say, if Allah wrote it, then it's right. Even if I don't understand it yet, that sentence alone can heal a lifetime of anxiety. The more you understand, the more you forgive. You stop expecting people to act from wisdom they don't have. You realize everyone is learning, just at different speeds. You were once unaware too, and Allah covered your flaws until you learned. So you start extending that same mercy outward. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop proving your worth through other people's approval. You stop taking things so personally, because understanding has given you perspective. What most people's actions say more about their pain than your value. And that awareness protects your peace. It allows you to stay kind even when others are cruel, to stay calm even when others are chaotic, because you've seen what happens when you lose that calm. How exhausting it is to keep chasing control. Now you surrender instead. You let life flow, knowing Allah never wastes a moment. You begin to feel grateful for everything that slowed you down, for everything that didn't work out, because you finally see how each delay was divine direction. Every wrong turn led you to the right destination eventually. Every lost opportunity made space for a better one. Every heartbreak freed your heart for a purer kind of love, the love of your Creator. And that understanding rewrites the definition of healing itself. Healing is no longer about returning to who you were before the pain. It's about becoming someone wiser than you've ever been. You realize Allah didn't want to restore your old peace. He wanted to give you new peace, deeper and unshakable. Now when you pray, your words come from a softer place. You no longer just ask, you converse. You no longer demand, you trust. Your dua sounds like friendship, not desperation. You sit with Allah not to complain, but to reflect, to thank, to breathe. That's what understanding does. It turns prayer into connection, not transaction. You stop begging for miracles and start noticing them. And you see them in small mercies. The right person crossing your path, a comforting sentence from a stranger, bika maha kalbika maha, a moment of peace that arrives out of nowhere. You realize miracles were never missing. You just weren't quiet enough to notice them. And when that realization settles, your entire relationship with life changes. You start walking slower, talking gentler, living lighter. You don't rush. You don't overthink. You don't fear the future like you used to, because you've learned that whatever happens, you'll understand it one day, and that's enough. You may not understand it today, but you trust that the meaning is on its way. You don't need to see the whole plan anymore. You just need to know the planner. And that knowledge alone becomes your rest. The heart that understands finally stops chasing peace, because it has become peace. It carries wisdom quietly, forgiveness easily, and gratitude naturally. It doesn't need revenge to feel complete. It doesn't need applause to feel seen. It doesn't need answers to feel safe. It just needs Allah. And the understanding that He was always there, even when you thought He was silent. You begin to love the pauses, the quiet seasons, the still nights, because you know those are the moments where souls grow the most. You no longer dread solitude. You cherish it, because now you know it's never really solitude when Allah is with you. You look at your reflection one morning and realize you've changed. Your eyes carry calm instead of confusion. Your smile carries surrender instead of resistance. And your heart whispers, this is what healing feels like. Innaka taba amadu qaqim. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace within it. That's the kind of healing only understanding can give. It doesn't erase your scars. It teaches you to see beauty in them. It doesn't promise you'll never cry again. It just promises that your tears will water new gardens this time. And you'll walk among those gardens one day, smiling softly, grateful that you finally understood. Because once you understand, you are free. When Allah defends you in silence, sometimes Allah doesn't defend you with words. He defends you with silence. You don't hear a thunder. You don't see a sign. But somewhere, quietly, things begin to move in your favor. You're crying in your room, trying to understand why people twisted your intentions. why your sincerity was questioned, why hearts you protected turned against you, and it feels unfair. You want to speak up, to explain yourself, to prove your truth, but Allah whispers in your heart, be still, I'm working. That whisper is not emptiness. It's His protection in motion. At first, silence feels like weakness. It feels like the world is winning against you. But Allah's silence is never absence, it's precision. He's writing a story where you won't have to defend yourself. Truth itself will. He hides your name in peace while He lets false stories tire themselves out. He lets noise expose itself. He lets the proud fall by their own echo. And then, when the dust settles, your dignity stands untouched. That's how Allah defends those who trust Him. Sometimes His defense doesn't look like victory. It looks like restraint. You wanted to fight back, but He tied your tongue for your own safety. You wanted to expose, but He softened your heart instead. You wanted to show your pain, but He covered it so your honor could remain pure. Because He knew if you fought like they fought, you'd lose the purity He was preparing you for. So He defended you by protecting you from yourself. There's beauty in that kind of silence. It's the calm of someone who knows that justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs time. When Allah defends you, He uses time as His sword. Days pass, and what was hidden begins to unfold. Truth starts to appear naturally without you lifting a finger. He makes events align in such a way that even those who doubted you begin to see what words never could. And you realize your silence was never in vain. It was the stage Allah built for His justice to perform. Sometimes you'll wake up one morning and the burden that used to feel heavy is just gone. You can't explain it. You didn't fix it. You simply outgrew the noise. That's Allah's quiet victory. He doesn't need witnesses to prove His care for you. He defends you in ways no one can trace. By turning hearts in your favor, by closing doors that would have humiliated you, by erasing conversations that could have destroyed you. That's divine protection. It happens quietly, mercifully, completely. And while people wonder why you're still standing, you smile because you know who held you. There's a moment in every believer's life when you learn that silence is not surrender, it's trust. It's you saying, Ya Allah, you saw what I didn't. You heard what I couldn't respond to. You judged better than I ever could. And in that moment, you become light again. Because revenge loses its taste when you realize Allah's justice never misses. He delays not to forget, but to design. He waits until the truth can't be denied. He lets lies grow loud so their fall becomes clear. When He finally lifts the curtain, you'll see how every moment of restraint protected something precious. Your peace, your reputation, your destiny. That's the golden whisper. The reminder that Allah's silence is never passive. It's active mercy disguised as stillness. He is rearranging the pieces you can't see, removing names from your circle that were quietly wishing for your fall, and preparing opportunities that your enemies can't touch. When He defends you, He doesn't just clear your name, He elevates your story. He makes your growth the loudest response. He lets your success speak the truth your tongue never had to. And by the time people realize it, you're too healed to even care. That's the softness of divine defense. You win without wounding anyone. You rise without rivalry. You heal without hate. Allah's justice always arrives silently. And when it does, it feels like peace, not payback. You might remember the times you wanted to speak up, to explain yourself to those who misjudged you. But then Allah sent you calm instead of courage. He made you forget the words. He made your voice tremble so you'd remain quiet. And later you realized that was Him saving you. Had you spoken, you would have said too much. Had you fought, you would have wasted energy meant for your future. So He silenced you, not because He didn't care, but because He was caring in the highest way. by keeping you out of the mud. He doesn't need your defense when He has already written your vindication. He just needs your trust. And when you give Him that trust, He unfolds miracles that make every insult look small. He sends you people who see your worth without you having to prove it. He brings you success in areas where others wished for your failure. He makes your peace louder than your pain. This is how He writes justice gently, perfectly, without humiliation. You won't even see the moment when He turns the tide. It happens quietly, hearts shift, opportunities appear, truth surfaces, and all you can say is, Subhanallah, I didn't do anything. Exactly. You did and He did. He let your silence speak volumes. He let your dignity become your defense. He let your patience polish your name. And when everything settles, the same people who once doubted you start speaking your truth for you. That's how Allah defends. He doesn't argue, He reveals. He doesn't shout, He shows. He doesn't rush, He perfects. You don't even realize you're being defended until you notice how every false story lost its audience. How every lie faded without you replying once. How every person meant to harm you somehow became irrelevant. That's divine defense. He clears your name not by force, but by allowing your character to be the evidence. And your calmness confuses them because they expected you to break. But you didn't. You grew. They expected your silence to make you forgotten, but Allah turned it into remembrance. He made your peace magnetic, your patience visible, your rise inevitable. This is the golden whisper. When Allah says, be still, I am enough. He doesn't need you to expose anyone. He doesn't need you to explain anything. He just needs you to keep walking with grace. Every time you hold your tongue, an angel writes it down. Every time you forgive what could have turned you bitter, your rank rises. Every time you choose peace over pride, your story becomes light. And one day, when you least expect it, you'll see how every moment of silence built your protection. You'll realize that while you were crying, He was clearing your path. While you were misunderstood, He was designing understanding in the right hearts. While you were hidden, He was preparing your unveiling, because Allah never forgets the one who chooses Him over revenge. Maybe now you understand why Allah stayed silent when you begged for answers. It wasn't distance, it was defense. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. He didn't let you explain yourself because He was writing an explanation no one could argue with. He didn't let you fight back because He was fighting in ways you couldn't see. You thought silence meant He'd forgotten you, but it was through silence that He was proving you. So when they whispered against you, He whispered for you. When they plotted your fall, He planned your rise. And now you're still standing. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you trusted the longest. You didn't win by noise. You won by peace. That is the beauty of Allah's justice. It doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives. And when it does, everyone knows. So let them talk. Let them assume. Let them misunderstand. Because when Allah defends you, it does it so quietly that the world won't even realize what happened until you're already walking in the victory He built for you in silence. You were never alone in your stillness. You were being protected in sacred quiet. And if you're watching this right now, that's your sign. Allah has already begun to move for you